And we're live. Hi everybody, my name is Patrick, or you can call me Pat. I'm from Space Dock Games. I'm the art director, and normally the artist, for Space Dock all board game endeavors. Thanks very much for being here today. Very excited about this. First time doing this live, so hope you tolerate some probable technical issues, but hopefully everything will be fine. So yeah, well, for those who, well, if you're here, you must know, but we're Space Dock Games, and we have launched a game on Kickstarter called Factory Floor, which is a sort of polyomino Tetris style tile laying game for 1 to 4 players. It's doing quite well. It's on the final stretch. We've already been funded. It was just about 3 days for it to be funded, so we're delighted with that. Thanks very much for everybody who's helped us get so far. And we are just coming into the last stretch. We should, I think we're wrapping up on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. And we just wanted to do something fun or different, hopefully, for people. We've had some positive feedback about the art, which personally I am very honored, humbled, and delighted for it. And we thought, well, sure, why don't we just try to do a bit of drawing for everybody? Obviously, hopefully we'll put this later as a video that you can watch at your own pace or leisure whenever you want to. We are live right now. It's 7 o'clock here in Ireland, where this stream is coming from. So if you have any questions during the stream or after, you can post in the comments, and we'll be more than happy to try to provide the best answers that we can. I'm actually gonna post in the chat there. There's the link to the Kickstarter if you want to have a look at it. But you know, you don't have to you don't have to go there or you know fund us if you don't want to. That's totally fine. We're very happy and delighted that you're here with us today, and you know, we'll do the best we can. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm just simply we're gonna do some drawing. We're gonna draw one of these characters. These are our factory workers. They are sort of very friendly. We kind of develop them. You know, there's a big sort of meeple element to the game. You're laying a lot of meeples down on the board game to sort of try to like improve your factory's productivity and score. So we wanted to do something that, like, you know, kind of represented that, or kind of sort of gave that vibe. So obviously, kind of makes sense that you have these sort of characters that are the factory workers on it. And kind of sort of to follow a little bit that idea that you know, all the meeples are alike, so the factory workers are almost like they came out of the factory themselves, you know. But it kind of follows that the sort of idea of, like, you know, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or the Smurfs, or the Fraggle Rock little guys, the Doozers, I think they're called. And yeah, and more recently the Minions, you know, which is that thing that, like, they all kind of sort of share the same basic features, the same kind of sort of design ideas, but maybe there's little things that kind of sort of separate them, you know. In this case, you know, maybe hair or skin tone, things like that. Which, by the way, you know, as some of you may know, one of our Kickstarter's pledge or sort of funding tiers is, you know, that we'll draw a version of you as a meeple that we'll be sending to you, and should feature in the either the box art or the manuals of the final print of the game. So we're very happy about that. So the characters themselves are pretty, as you can see, they're not highly complicated. I don't think so. Anyway, we're gonna try to draw one. We're gonna find one in a pose, and we're gonna do it from scratch. So I haven't really started anything had a couple of these in my head, as the stream was coming along and I was approaching. I was thinking, oh, maybe we draw this or this character or this pose. So, but still pretty open-minded. We're gonna try to draw from the start. I'm estimating that this will probably take somewhere in the space of an hour to 2 hours, give or take, end to end. Some of it might be a bit nitty-gritty, artsy stuff. Like there's no montage basically. So there's a little bit of music playing to keep things alive. That's right, and but some of it is just you're just gonna see a dude drawing. I hope you like that. We'll try to talk and try to keep it interesting as we go. That's right, and my partner in crime, co-creator of Space Talk and game designer of Factory Floor, Tom Hughes. He's on the chat as well, so he's happy to answer any questions that you may have. Great, so we're gonna kick off. I'm gonna remove this landing page. I don't think, yeah, we can do it. So, this is in terms of canvas, this is just a HD sized 1080 1920 image. I have it at 150 dpi, just it's a size that I like in terms of it's not too heavy resolution wise for something that's not going to be printed. Something if you want to do things printed, 300 dpi or dots per inch. It's usually like the go-to for TV and things like that. 72 sometimes is fine, but so 150 kind of nice balance. And yeah, let's kick off. Now, first thing I'm going to do, I never like to I can sometimes accidentally draw on the background, the default background layer. I'll usually double click on that, turn it into a normal layer, which I can then lock, because it is actually filled in white. It's not transparent. So if I was drawing on it, it's like drawing on a piece of paper, which it's fine. But I usually like to separate things. Sorry, I should have said, just to give you some context. I work just about me. I work in animation professionally. I've been graduated from the Irish School of Animation about like 15 years ago. No, 13 years ago or something, and I've been working in the Irish animation industry since then. Mostly as a storyboard artist, but I've done character design and concept work in animation as well. So sorry, just to give you some context of where I'm coming from saying all these things. So I try to sort of approach that like what's called a non-destructive sort of system of drawing, which is that you kind of separate your layers, you separate the elements in the drawing in order to say if you need to fix one, it doesn't sabotage everything else. The risk of drawing everything in one layer, which is fine if you're kind of so inclined to do it, is that say if you erase something, you're going to erase everything. So in my case, I tend to go back and forth a lot and experiment on things. So if I can draw I change a line or colors or things like that, it means I can go back without having lost things that I'm already happy with. So I just create a new layer. It's a transparency layer or an alpha layer. There's nothing on it. If I turn the other screen, the background layer, you see this little sort of grid. It just tells you that it's an alpha. Beg your pardon if you are already an artist. I may be saying things that you know very well by heart. I'm just gonna sort of playing it safe and saying it to anybody who might be interested, or if you're interested in art but you're just kicking off, then things that are good to know. Great. So we got our document. I'm gonna start with just what I call my marker brush. We're not going to use too many brushes. I just tend to like one brush for my roughs, and then I have a brush for my clean line, and then we might have a couple of brushes for coloring and shading, but shouldn't be too much. I'd say there's about 4 brushes altogether in this process. So sometimes you can get too caught up in brushes. Brushes can be fun. You can do a lot of cool things with it, especially when it comes to effects and sort of final rendering, but don't get too caught up with it at the start. Just find a couple of brushes that you're comfortable using, that kind of give you the right feel, and then you just go ahead with it. Um, oh yeah, sure, Tom. Yep. You can go ahead and put my page in there if you want to as well. That I never update, but you know, there's stuff there as well. Great. So, sorry, checking the chat there. Oh, hey Damon. Oh, you know, I have so many pictures of you already drawing so many poses. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. You get. I have. I'm kind of preparing a calendar. Just a demo. Rawr. Hey Alan, thanks very much for being here. Thanks very much for the French translation. We're very happy with all the translations. So cool. So let's kick off. So I'm gonna get my marker brush. It just kind of gives me this sort of feel that it is just a marker, and it kind of makes me think that it forces me to be loose because it's not something they're gonna do clean work with it. It's also a little bit, you know, there's a bit of transparency, so there's a bit sort of, you can see the ink sort of like building up on it. And again, it kind of makes me, it puts me in a sort of sketch sort of mindset, if you will. And I also I lower the opacity, you know, simplest way of lowering the opacity, you have your keys 1 to 0 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0 on your keyboard, and you type, you press say 5. The opacity, you see it here, reduces to 5. Again, I just want to keep loose right now. I'm not going to commit anything. You're going to see a lot of kind of random sketching going on. With these characters, as you can see there, as you can see by the reference, they're kind of like really just a cylinder. Actually, we'll zoom in a little bit. You know, they're very much just one shape. Highlight them there. Oops. See, yeah, you can see it. So, you know, we have they're very much like a cylinder. You know, like the legs are kind of sort of coming off from that sort of shape, and the arms sort of sticking out from it. So they're just a very sort of unified shape, just with the limbs sticking out either side. So there's not too much complexity in them. You don't have to worry too much about anatomy in the sense that, you know, I don't know what you'd find if you did an x-ray of these guys, how the bones are like welded together or something, or fused, but they're kind of very rubber hosed, you know, so they follow that sort of idea of rubber hose animation, which is like their limbs, rather than sort of bending in one place, like in your elbow and your knee, they kind of sort of bend like old sort of Merry Melodies cartoons, you know, like on Disney and so on. And like it kind of goes through seasons of popularity across the decades. But it's very handy for this because again, it kind of, you know, it contributes to their overall personality and their movement, and it helps us convey a bit more energy, because this is the thing, because they are so like sort of stuck and stiff together. We need to sort of find ways to sort of make them feel dynamic, and they're not too stiff, and that's why they kind of become very rubber hose. We're kind of following what's normally in animation we call it the line of action. You know, the line of action is sort of this this imaginary line. Usually you can associate it with like the flow, the spine, but it helps us convey energy. So even though, like, say, basically our character is sort of like, you know, a tube, or it's kind of a bean really when you start sort of thinking about like maybe like their bone sticks out a little bit or something like that, you know, but they are just that, you know, and you can get actually a lot of emotion out of that. In animation, there's a famous exercise that everybody does in college, which is called the emotional sack, you know, which is just you know, you're kind of just thinking like an old school sort of flour sack, you know, and that's what it makes us think about lines of action, because we can make these, you know, depending on how we make those we think about the line of action in them, you know, we can actually convey energy, even though, you know, the character doesn't have any features, it's just a bag. So, you know, body position and how we sort of make that work. Hola Summer, saludos a la población latina que nos ha apoyado. Muchas gracias a todos, un abrazo. And yeah, so we're doing, so with a line of action, we can just sort of think about the flow of the character, and you can see this in like in cartoons, obviously, in performance. It's just the way our body moves, it kind of sort of projects a certain energy. So you can see it here, depending on what we're doing, the characters are kind of sort of very much, you can see the line of action going through them. And flow and energy doesn't necessarily mean that they are like peppy or happy, but it just conveys the emotion that they have. So great. So I'm not gonna delete them because maybe they're useful for later if it comes. I'm gonna delete that line. I know where it's snuck in first. Okay, great. So I'm gonna start now with my proper sketch, and yeah, so I can this is just a sort of like a sort of a tick from animation that I like to use like sort of bluish pencils for my sketches. It used to be a thing that when animation was sort of paper based, or more commonly based, you do your sketches in blue because when you went to like sort of photocopy the image, the blue doesn't come through, so you clean it up with black, but then the blue behind it doesn't go through. So a bit of a sort of thing with me, sort of to imitate that. Right, so let's. I'm just gonna sort of drawing things and like see what happens. I did have. I was picturing, because we could do like something very much like just a character standing, but I thought it might be more fun to do something a little bit different, even though who knows how's that gonna work. But like, so I'm thinking this character. I don't know. I was having dinner with my wife and my daughter, and for whatever reason, I kind of sort of started picturing like a bit of a sort of like this sort of factory worker like skating, or like on some sort of like maybe snowboarding or something like that. What she's he or she are doing skating the factory, health and safety may have to do some evaluation about their performance, but for the time being, I think we're going to do that. So as you can see, so I'm kind of thinking about like usually if you're like skating or things like that, you're kind of trying to keep your body weight or like you kind of keep your balance. So she might be a little bit hunched. I'm kind of picturing it's a she at this point. So yeah, we're just gonna like their bodies, their proportions are, the head takes up a fair bit of the overall body. The main body, the head kind of takes about a third of the entirety of the body. That has kind of sort of changed a little bit, I suppose, as I go, and I kind of get more used to the characters, and then it means that I have to sort of try different things with them, because you first do a character in a pose and you think, okay, that looks cool, but then how's that character going to behave in different positions or different angles, and then you might have to sort of like explore different things or try different things with it. Oh, cheers, Donut Face. Yeah, the line of action is very, very important. If you're into animation, it's a big thing that they'll kind of really like sort of hammer that in, and it's really handy because like sometimes, you have to bear in mind that like when we're drawing, it's all about gesture, and it's about sort of making sure that the audience understands what we're trying to say. That's why like in animation, for instance, everything tends to be exaggerated because you want to make that come across. Like a character, a drawing. Like when you're looking at a person or an actor, you are picking up all the sort of micro sort of facial features and things like that. You're reading a lot of information, but a character simply doesn't have that amount because it doesn't have all those sort of facial muscles and things like that. So you're trying to make that message come across and make it so in a powerful way. So we want to sort of think about those things. How do I make our character more compelling or more interesting, or how do we make people understand what our character is going through? Now, as I'm talking, I realize, okay, that arm is going to be, it looks pretty big to me, so I'm going to sort of get rid of that. Let's see, I'm just going to pick an eraser there. Oh, sorry. Let's And we are, it doesn't matter. Again, I'm gonna go over this on a black line, so I don't really need to go too heavy on like erasing and things like that. But just so I don't get too confused with what I'm doing. Yeah, so we're gonna have, we are doing a little bit of foreshortening here, so the character kind of feels like it's kind of coming out of the page a little bit. It's not going straight at us, because then, you know, it might be a little bit hard to read some of the features on the character. This way, we're kind of having a nice clear silhouette. And silhouettes are a big deal when you're kind of drawing characters. Again, because your animation and drawing and things like you're kind of dealing with visual shorthand. You're trying to sort of make your information come across as quickly as possible for the viewer. And a silhouette is something that is, you know, a clear silhouette really helps us, the audience, understand what's going on very quickly. And then, you know, because we go from broad to detail, you know, we'll kind of get, you know, we get a size of the full image, and then we're going to go in further and further, trying to sort of figure out what's going on in there, you know, and the little details, you know. So if the broad thing is clear, you know, it's handy. I think it's, you know, it's kind of an evolutionary thing, you know, like it was really handy to spot the silhouette of the saber-toothed tiger before you saw, you know, the eyes, because, you know, it kind of gave you a head start, right? So, you know, so we're doing, so in this case, yeah, I have a nice silhouette because I can see all the limbs very clearly, you know. If I had done the character kind of more front on, you know, which is fine, depending obviously on what you're doing, but say if I had done the character more front on like this, it becomes a bit more complicated because, you know, the arm is going to overlap. So if you think about the silhouette, then you're not seeing, some of the things are going to be a bit less clear than they are here. Even if I sort of block painted this into one shape, one black shape, you probably would understand roughly what's going on. Now, if your audience is getting more comfortable or more aware of your character, then that's fine, you know. So if I was doing like a comic book and you've been seeing these characters for a while, then, you know, it's fine, I was to try these things. But I'm kind of sort of working on the basis here that maybe people are not aware so much about these guys. So we're gonna do them that way, just a little bit more clear. So, you know, so we do have, they have like sort of these big headphones, kind of earmuff things to protect them from the factory noise. Research is always important in your characters, even though if they're cartoony. We want to sort of give them something that maybe relates them to the real world, and it allows us to sort of kind of link what they do and their behavior and so on. So, you know, so here's we're doing the little helmet. Oh, hey Karen, thanks. Thanks, Eliza. And we are just drawing the, you know, the top of the helmet there, and, you know, thinking about the sort of the underside of the visor. And there's a head, I'm gonna say headphones, but they're like earmuffs or ear noise protector or something. And they have like these big protector, like eyewear glasses. And they just have overall, they don't really have a neck. We just kind of sort of define that through the overalls that they're wearing, and they have their little pocket, and, you know, the buttons. I kind of added sort of side pockets as well. This was more for me to, like, because I felt when I was designing them, I felt there was a lot of empty space there. So I just wanted a little, you know, a little bit of content to, again, like convey what they're wearing, which is like overalls, which is a sort of worker look to some degree, or a certain type of worker design, I guess. But you don't want to overload it, especially with something so simple as these guys. It's not like I want to put, like, you know, little stitches and them carrying like a toolbox. I mean, maybe a tool belt could work for one of them to like identify something, but you don't want to get too overwrought with detail. So we're just bringing a little bit of character onto them, and I think she's coming along now. We're gonna, because just to sort of help us with that idea of like, she's obviously, this is a factory, so you know, the only logical thing is that the wheels are like cogs, you know, because this is, you know, this is factory logic. She's obviously, you know, created her own little skateboard. This is actually, I'm just sort of making my life harder because I'm gonna have to go in and draw these guys later. Actually, we're gonna do like, there's a lot of these sort of conveyor belts things across the game, so I'm just gonna use that as if it was like the board. I think perspective is roughly okay. It's not like, there's probably some tweaking on it, but again, it's a cartoon. It's not like a sort of hyper realistic thing, so I think we can get away with it. Just a hand there, and yeah, just to sort of give us that sense of motion, I think, you know, we'll just give her some, you know, like a ponytail, you know, and in that sense that's really helping us because everything else about this character is very much sort of skin tight, is very much attached. Yeah, Raul, you know, he may have an empanada, that's right, so he's or she may have an empanada. Maybe she's trying to run away because everybody else wants her empanadas, you know, or maybe she's trying to get to the empanada stall, you know, because that queue gets big. And you know, I kind of gave them kind of sort of little circular rosy cheeks to all of them, and you know, she is, you know, I think let's say that, yeah, I think she is sort of decided to do this, so she's enjoying it. Obviously, you know, if she was suddenly, like, if the character was panicking, maybe that would be a whole different thing, because she's in control. This pose sort of defines that she's in control. She's managing the situation. If it's somebody like, you know, freaking out, then maybe it would be, you know, we go back to our line of action and be like, you know, sort of maybe panicking, you know, like hands across her face or something, or maybe they'll be like sort of hunched over, you know, because they don't want to see where it's all gonna go. Hope these sort of squiggles are kind of clear enough, you know. Which is another thing, you know, when you're an artist, sometimes you kind of have to always think, well, I know that this is clear to me, but is it clear to my audience? Which is where the kind of the hard part of, you know, showing your stuff to other people and then giving you feedback, you know, comes along. And in art profession, you're gonna kind of have to accept that. It's, you know, with time, you kind of get better at it. You can learn how to sort of figure out what, you know, what to take and what you can sort of accept or respect, but not necessarily do. But it is important. You do have to show your stuff to the world. Sometimes there is I know I had it, still do sometimes. You know, you kind of have this sort of inclination at the start of saying, well, I don't want to show my things until it's perfect. Well, the fact of the matter is that it might be better because you show it to other people and they show it in its imperfections, and then you can sort of develop from that, you know. So don't hide your art. So I'm lowering the tone, I'm reducing the opacity because I want to do some shading. Just not that it's necessarily going to come across in the final drawing, but just for me to sort of get some clarity about where things are going on it. So we kind of know now. There will be coloring to this, and you know, color means light to some degree. Well, I suppose there'll be light after the color. You could do flat colors, but we'll want to have we'll want to consider lighting on it. The characters do have shadows on them, so it's kind of good to sort of start thinking about it. Now, none of this is in lock, you know. Like chances are that I'll go back and sort of tweak things and so on. But you know, we got something. That's right, factory logic, man. It's okay, Raul. Yeah. I think that's it. Now, handy trick, if you don't know, you probably do, but if you don't know, is to sort of flip your drawing, because you flip your drawing, or you can, you know, if it's a real drawing, you can put it against a mirror. Because there's things that we just don't pop until you flip them. Now, in my case, you might be seeing that I just have an action that makes it flip, but you can sort of grab the layer and flip it. And by looking at it, now that I see it on the other side, I see, okay, you know, that doesn't look quite as right, so I'm just gonna like tweak that. I could go in, and I think that's what I want. Yeah, I'm kind of more happy with that now. We're gonna flip it again. Yeah. So, because sometimes you may not notice, you might sort of be skewing things a little bit just because you're drawing on one side. But if you flip it, man, everything just becomes obvious, like all the things that are wrong with it. And then you cry, or you shout to the heavens. As an artist, you are entitled to do that. Just to the heavens, not to other people. And then we move on, and we tweak it. Great. Okay, I'm kind of happy enough with this. There's no point for me to sort of go any further in terms of a sketch. I think that is as clear as I need it to be for what I'm going to move forward. Obviously, I am familiar with these characters. I am familiar now with them a little bit. I could have, at the start, and if you're starting with like a character design, it may be that you end up doing a lot more, trying to sort of figure out like volumes or like how it behaves a little bit. And that's fine. Don't get too bogged down. At least from a production perspective, you want to sort of always think, well, when I'm gonna, I might double down on my work, where you do kind of have to think efficiently when you're like in sort of, at least in animation industry, and like sort of like commercial arts, so to speak. Because deadlines and time are always part of the equation. So you can spend a million hours sketching it, but then maybe some of that energy could go into the cleanup anyway, because you're gonna do changes on it. So sketch is done. I'm gonna lower the opacity on this so it doesn't so you can just see a little bit, so it doesn't really get too much in the way. It's just reference. Now here's gonna come the part that we'll see. Sometimes it goes easy, sometimes it goes a little bit slower. This is the cleanup, and this is kind of be a bit more zen in that, like, you're just basically tracing your drawing. Now what I choose is what I call my clean brush. Oops, sorry, I'm on the wrong layer. My clean brush, so kind of gives me a nice sort of continuous, very sort of thick line, unbroken line. I suppose that's actually the most important thing on it. So that will help me kind of sort of give a nice clean look to the character. It's also weighted, you can sort of taper it, as you might want to call it as well. It just means that that the line, the line is not just doesn't have the same thickness end to end, but it varies, and that's very important for a character for drawing. Normally you want to have that sort of weighted line, because it conduces to it makes the line more lively, gives it more energy, it helps with the flow of the character, and it can help you with even foreshortening and things like that, because a thicker line might make it feel that it's closer. A skinnier line may mean that it's sort of a smaller feature or something like that. Now, one thing that maybe people do that are risk of doing when you're sort of doing in this cleanup is that you'll try to do something like that. You'll try to sort of like go over it, as if it was like one, line drawing like this. And this isn't the way to do it, because you're suddenly you have to go very slowly, because your hand is going very slowly, trying to sort of trace everything or trying to track it. And in doing so, you're losing the strength of the stroke, and the stroke starts feeling a little bit broken. Obviously, this is in terms of like drawing sort of freehand. Some people do it with vectors, and then things kind of are a little bit different in that sense. So even though I'm saying clean up, I'm going to still do a lot of erasing here, because what I'm going to do is that you want to like just go over the line. You just want to just overshoot it. So I'm going to draw. So I'm looking at this leg here, and I'm doing that. And and in my case, and this is kind of like a sort of a tick of mine, that you're gonna see me do the same line like 4 or 5 times or even more until I'm kind of happy with that line. But what I mean is that then that's the kind of the line of the leg, and then I'm going over the line of her torso there. That roughly seems okay. So, and then we just basically erase, and this is what you do, and you do this in paper as well. We see That's in paper. You want to be careful of how thick or heavy your trace is. You don't want to like sort of like carve into the page. But you can do that. Donut face, yeah, I can go into the clean brush without sketching out first. Obviously, it depends on. Obviously, it's easier in like in a digital mode because you can always still erase it. So in some ways, like the sketch, you could use your clean brush as a line, as a sorry, you can use your clean line as a sketch in some ways. It's if you're comfortable with the character, you can do it for sure. If you're figuring things out still, then maybe it's better to sort of do a little bit of sketching. But the sketching can be very simple. You know, it might just be a couple of circles, you know, boxes and things like that. So it does depend on how comfortable you are with your character and what you're doing. What's handy about sketching though is that because you are a little bit sort of, you're not committed to the thing so solidly, it allows you to explore and to try different things a little bit more. Everybody's gonna know maybe that example of somebody who starts sort of drawing the eye, you know, and they start drawing the eye very like sort of detail and all these sort of things, and then suddenly they have to realize, well, I have to sort of fit a head around this, and it becomes really hard to do sometimes because you haven't really looked at the whole picture. So sketching helps you sort of look at that, but also what is kind of was starting with is that it allows you to sort of try different things. Because maybe you think, oh, hold on, this pose actually might look better from this different angle, or maybe this this will work better from this with this on it or something. So the sketching allows you to be a little bit more free about how you want to approach things. But if you're comfortable with the character, and maybe if you're in a tight deadline or something like that, then maybe you just go straight to cleanup. You know, that will come with probably how comfortable you are and the knowledge of it. I think it's important to always think that you kind of have to be patient with some of these things. I know I'm not sometimes, but like that to sort of let it happen, sort of find out what you want to do with the drawing, rather to say, oh, I want to see I want to get to the end, too quickly, and so just you sort of figure out what you want to do. At the same time, there is a point where you think, well, I'm kind of just going around in circles, and this is not sort of like time efficient for me. So I'm just gonna like move on to clean up, and if there's some lingering issues, I'm just gonna resolve them on the fly as it goes there. I'm just wondering about that leg a little bit. Do I need to bend this more? Yeah, maybe I do. So yeah, so we erase. Yes, I think maybe I will bend it a little bit. Now you also notice maybe that like I'm trying to do a lot of. I have to look back at that a little bit. We're doing a lot of curved lines, even though it's a single piece. We kind of do curved lines like this because we are, even though obviously it's a 2D drawing, it's a flat thing, it's kind of, it tries to create the impression of depth that is a 3D thing, that is there's around it, unless very much you can have a you're going for a very specific kind of graphic approach. You're trying to sort of like create the illusion that the character has depth and has volume, as kind of we say, sometimes I actually give workshops every once in a while to people about like storyboarding and things like that, and I was telling them, like this is from Chris Sanders, the guy behind Lilo and Stitch, that when he designs characters, he always does kind of curved lines, because we're not that solid. I mean, we're kind of just like sacks of water, like there's volume and things like that. It kind of sort of moves around. Now you're all very pretty or handsome sacks of water, but that's what we are. So so we're not stiff. We're not like a block. We're not like a piece of metal. So like our muscles and our volumes kind of sort of change shape as it goes. So curved lines. It doesn't have to be like super curved, but some curve kind of helps. With art, there's always and also there's another thing is that you do kind of sort of mix and match. Like if you're talking about like a human anatomy, you kind of mix straight lines and straight lines, because there are like bony sections, which are kind of the more straight lines, and then there's like muscle sections that would be the curved ones. So that's like your leg, for instance. But again, we're kind of keeping it. These guys are very cartoony. Yeah, Donut. Yeah, it's totally a great way of sort of finding the character, and yeah, just sort of find it and see how it works for you, because you kind of want to enjoy it. I think like even if if you're doing animation or art, it's because you enjoy it. It's say to people, it's not the sensible career choice. So you want to do it because you enjoy it. So you're gonna kind of have fun with them. So you kind of take it and you use them. You want to find the characters that kind of even there might be characters that are that they kind of come designed for you, because if you're working for a client or for a studio, that somebody has done those things, and that's fine. But you kind of want to make sure that you find what works for them, and you want to make sure that you're enjoying kind of as much as you can the experience of actually drawing them, and see what you can contribute to it. So absolutely, sort of find what works, and sometimes I don't know if it's just an animation, but like a lot of times you can sort of have this idea that the first thing that you come up with, there's this idea that maybe, I've caught lightning in a bottle, like this, because this is like the spontaneous piece of creation. This is the thing that just came out of nowhere. You don't know where this character came from quite, and this is the first thing that you put on page. So sometimes we can be a bit protective about that kind of first iteration. And what we want to do is that not get too bogged down with that. Like it may end up being the right version, but you don't want to say, okay, just because this is the first thing that came up with, this is the one I'm gonna get locked down with. I think the guy said, the people at Pixar kind of have a saying. They say, you should date your drawings but not fall in love with them. Which is like I say, you should look at your work the way you look at somebody else's work. We just look at it and see, okay, well, this is working, this is not working, and then just sort of move on from that and sort of learn from it. It's easier to do it at sketch level in some ways, or like sort of confront or like find new things or like change things at sketch level than they are when you've really committed like whatever, a day or two at doing something, and then you're like, which it's going to happen, you're going to have to do fixes as well for those things, but so it's easier to sort of try to catch things early on. So again, just sort of kind of keep playing with it, that is the base of a Surfer Summer, actually. Yeah. Who knows, maybe there'll be a Surfer Factory, for the cool dudes and people who want to like be productive but also have fun on the beach. And yeah, I know, Karen. I know we are just sacks of water, but as I said, we're beautiful sacks of water, and just we all have to be proud of that, although I need to go back to the gym to try to, well, can't, but I need to get back to some exercise to make some of that water be, let's say, not as flowy. I don't know. By the way, this is all stream of consciousness as I'm drawing and talking, so apologies if some jokes kind of land flat, or you're like, what is he on about? First time trying to do this sort of streaming and drawing at the same time, but it's actually fun. I'm enjoying it. So as you can see, again, I don't mind overshooting things, okay? In fact, things like that, like I'm gonna do this belt, but like the belt in in the final character, you only see like part of it, like the bits that like the hoops are quite thick between them. But this way, I know that I kind of have a two straight line. You know, I have like a lines that are continuous, right? And if I don't like each bit individually, it might not feel like it flows just as one piece. You might not feel that it's the same belt, so to speak. You know. So and you know, this is the I'm gonna say the Zen part, because again, you kind of sort of zone in, and like you might get into like some people call the flow. You know, that now you're like just sort of cleaning up and drawing, and I guess, you know, it's what I love drawing is that when I'm just working on it, I just sort of fade into it, you know, and I'll just sort of start, you know, just relaxes my mind anyway. So I recommend it to people. It might not be for you, of course, but it really works for me. Which in a way I have to like force myself to like keep, not force myself, but I have to like sort of remind myself of sort of talking, because I could just sort of go into like this sort of like kind of mode and just sort of like kind of forget that there's people and there's an audience, and it just be just sort of happy out drawing, you know. But yeah, so we're just sort of, again, as you can see with the mouth, I'm just gonna, I don't mind overshooting these lines, and then I'll just go back and erase whatever I don't need from them. But that way you have this sort of nice powerful stroke, you know, this sort of energy that comes through the line. It's very important in a cartoon, obviously. You know, if you're doing like a very like sort of like still pose, or like a serious like almost photorealistic drawing, maybe that wouldn't be, beg your pardon, the case as such. But these characters are meant to be fun, so you kind of want that energy to come through through all the elements of it. Sorry, I just remember that they kind of have a little shirt underneath, which is actually coming out quite well. He says with surprise, because you never know. Sometimes the lines are just glowing from the page, and then you're just kind of going with it. And sometimes it's just, you know, you're deep in a cave just trying to like find something, just working at it. That's okay. I think it's important that people don't get frustrated. Like if you're any artist out there, sometimes you can have this sort of perception that like, because you see somebody do a really nice drawing or something, you might have the impression that, oh, that just happened sort of like just by magic, like sort of spontaneous like occurrence of art. But that's not really the case, you know. Not most of the times, you know. Even like amazing artists, you know, you'll find like all the sketch underneath and all the work underneath, and even if you don't see it immediately, you see like there's on the actual sort of piece of paper or image, the work is in like a million other sketches that you haven't seen, you know. So I think that's important, you know, for any person there who is like sort of starting in art or thinking about it, that, you know, don't get frustrated, don't compare yourself to other people who've been doing it for quite a while, and there is a lot of work on it, so which is why you kind of want to like it from the get-go, you know. It has to kind of make sense to you, just because, you know, not because, I don't know, you're gonna be famous, or because you're expecting loads of money. I mean, that's nice if it happens, of course, but, you know, but that's not what you can get out of it, not for sure. Sorry, I'm going a little bit sort of philosophical there, but like, just to sort of, in that sense, the only thing to say is like there's a lovely book called Art and Fear, and the authors there, I can't remember their names now, but the book is Art and Fear, and it says the only thing that you're sure to get out of art is that if you work on art, you'll get better at doing art, you know. And, you know, that's it. That's what you're gonna get from anything. You spend time doing art, you will get better, you know. So it's a good thing, and that's the one thing you're sure to get from art, you know. let's see, am I entrancing it? This was factory floor works on myself. Point on trick. I love it. Well, Tom, I think we figured out, you know. I think we have the. Now, sorry, Samir, you're getting no royalties from that idea, okay? By the way, Tom, get legal. We're I'm not giving you any money. And okay, so I'm actually, you know what I should have done? I kind of got caught up in the talking. Let me just flip this. Yeah, I think that's fine. Obviously, I'm just flipping the line drawing rather the blue line underneath it. Let's see. And what did I do? Oh, I'm in the wrong. Right. Okay. So I'm kind of quite happy with the character as it is. So what I'm doing now is I'm kind of going on and sort of cleaning the line a little bit, and I'm kind of adding a little bit more weight to certain sections just to sort of bring them up. I will do the thing that you've kind of seen a million times in cartoons and things like that. In this case, I think it works, is that I'm kind of going a little bit thicker around the edges. Again, you're kind of tapering. You may see it here, you know, that, you know, it's thicker here, but it kind of sort of narrows down here as it goes into the finger. So we're keeping things weighted, you know. It's not an even sort of thing as across, but we are making it thicker. It'll make the character sort of pop and stand out a little bit from its background. And it kind of sort of brings it all together. Obviously, there's different styles of drawing, but you know, it is good to like sort of connect your lines. You know, some people will, you know, sometimes characters, some people draw them, you know, like that, and that might be okay for like your style. If it's across the board, it might actually be suitable for it. But normally, at least from an animation perspective, you tend to want to sort of kind of have a sort of a solid lines. You know, it kind of sort of connects your character and makes it a little bit more solid. At least that's what like a director told me years ago. So, and I think, you know, I think it's sound advice. So, you know, we're just going over the lines. Now, you have to forgive me. This is probably not that exciting, but you know, it kind of has to. That's what we're gonna have to do. We actually, we're not doing too bad though. I am keeping the so the variety of thickness and lines kind of also kind of sort of changes the priority or the importance of each line. So some lines, again, so I'm kind of sort of prioritizing the line that kind of makes a silhouette, and some of the lines or the detail, you know, they're a little bit thinner. If every line was the same, that means everything is the same value to the eye, and then that means that the eye doesn't know what to prioritize. So that's why, like in a picture, usually you're talking about sort of a focal point or a focus point. You're trying to sort of, or primary focus and secondary focus and so on. So like the primary focus is where you want the eye to go to first, and then, you know, then you'll move on to, then the eye, once it kind of lands there, then it'll explore the rest of the information of the picture. You know, that obviously in like a full, like say, landscape, it might be a very sort of specific thing that you gravitate towards because of the position in the picture or the coloring or the lighting. With a character, you tend to go towards the eyes and the face. You tend to gravitate towards that. But again, I'm just gonna sort of using the line sort of gonna make that shape a bit solid. You notice that, for instance, because I am doing, even though the character, you know, the arm is part of the character, I am making a thick line at the level of the torso because I'm separating a little bit. It's a little thick. I'm separating that part from the arm to make sure that you kind of understand the arm is, it's a little bit in background. Now that'll be helped along once we go into like sort of coloring. Same thing with the headphones or the earmuffs. And you know, if I go into some detail, I'll do like a little bit like a skinnier line, just to sort of lock that down, and we can do a little bit of sort of like, you know, texturing, I suppose, or like hatching of lines, just to sort of give the perception of a surface, just to sort of give us a sense of, again, like a volume. Same thing I did here, you know, with the underside of the visor, or this sort of little kind of glass reflection, which I think it's a little bit thick, so I'm just gonna again, like on the glass, the visor may have a little bit of a thickness on it, just to sort of make that, just again to give it a bit of volume. I'm gonna kind of the fold of the elbow there, so it's gonna be there. I kind of like doing these sort of little twisty curls to sort of define like the joints, because even though it is like a rubber hose character, you know, we're trying to sort of trying to kind of create a relationship with the real world, or the things that we know and we understand. That tends to help. And we are trying, or yeah, you can actually, like, I'm doing this freehand. I'm working on you know, with my pen tablet. I use an old Intuos 3. It's not a Cintiq. It's just like a desktop tablet. It helps my posture actually, because I'm just drawing and I'm looking at the monitor. So obviously, like, a stylus is really handy for the drawings. You can these days, you can add smoothing to your lines, so the computer will kind of make them smoother for you. So if you're still kind of sort of getting to grips with, like, you know, getting kind of a nice sort of flowy line or a nice sort of stroke line, then, you know, that can be helpful. I wouldn't be too over reliant on it. You still want to, like, sort of practice that yourself, your control. But it's handy. Okay, so that's actually, I think I'm happy enough with that. And now so what I'm gonna do is that we do have, let's see. Yeah. Oh, cheers, Wayne. Thanks very much. It's and a quack to you, Tom. I know, Donut. Yeah, I know. It's sort of like, you know, sort of self-evident, but I think it's valuable because sometimes, you know, because in a way that, you know, that means that no matter what you're doing, you're getting what you want out of art, which is to get better at art. You know, rather than think, oh, I'm not famous enough or I'm not making enough money. I mean, yeah, you obviously you want at least to, like, make a living, and you want to, like, kind of have respect or feel that you're kind of appreciated, for sure, like anybody does, you know. But it just means that, like, you're at least getting something out of it if you understand that that's what you're getting out of art, is that you're going to be better at art because you enjoy art, you enjoy doing it. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna draw this skateboard thing on a separate layer because I don't want to accidentally. I'm kind of happy enough with the character, and I don't want to sort of mess that up. And again, with, like, straight lines, you know, if I was trying to sort of hit this, you can see that it kind of sort of just gets weaker, you know. So if I just go, you know, hell for leather, you know, to the big straight line, and then we'll just erase them afterwards. Apologies if, by the way, I keep saying things like, you know. I've been made aware that this is like a bit of a tick that I have, apparently, when I'm talking to the camera and when I'm just talking to myself, or, like, well, not to myself, but, like, because if I'm talking to myself, how you know, but just for the, yeah, so just talking to the camera, I suppose. We're gonna erase this. So this kind of comes out a little bit flat over here, so I'm just gonna erase that. There we go. Yeah, I'm just gonna fix that line just so it feels like it's just one continuous shape that is coming along. I'm gonna erase the back of it. This, you know, I don't have to get too pure about that bit because I know it's not gonna be seen. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cheat a little. I'm gonna separate I'm gonna do another layer, and I'm gonna do this cogwheel. Now that's gonna be more of a hassle because of all the little bits on it. I don't want to get too caught into it. So hold on, I'm gonna I'm lowering. I don't want to get confused about which layer I'm working on, so I'm gonna work, that's my line, my wheel, and we're gonna now, geometry, like sort of heavy kind of sort of geometry like that, can be a bit more of a hassle with just freehand. So I would be like, depending on the complexity of something like this, I might sort of start relying on like line tools and things like that from Photoshop. In this case, I think we'll get away with it. So I'm just doing the basic cylinder shape, and we're gonna sort of make this the spokes come out of it. Obviously, there's some foreshortening going on here. I'm kind of conscious. I don't want us to spend like a million years here. So the sort of thing that I could go back in and sort of start like tweaking a little bit. But I'm as I'm talking, and this obviously will spill into like how as you go into working with these things, or how familiar, sorry, I should say, how familiar you become with your process. Then you might start thinking, well, I know I'm gonna do this with this later on down the line. So I'm kind of thinking, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, because she's kind of rolling and everything, this may end up being a bit blurred. Like I may give it some sort of motion blur of some kind. So again, it's about managing your energy or your effort on it, and not get too bogged down on something that, again, it's not the main thing. It's not like this thing. Obviously, we want it to sort of convey what we want it to convey, but ideally, it's not what people are focusing on from the drawing. Like if everybody just sort of sits and say, well, I really just gonna really focus on that cogwheel, and I don't know, maybe something happened with the rest of the drawing that's what people's attention is kind of sort of flying towards. And again, I'm kind of doing my little stroke around it just to sort of lock it down, sort of feel a bit more solid. And we're gonna do like sort of the inner side of it. It's important to, again, sort of find the right level of detail that conveys the information without necessarily getting too bogged down. And think about scale. Like this thing is tiny in relation to the drawing. So, you could go in and sort of like do a lot of like metal texturing, like little dots and grooves and things like that. But it may be relevant, again, because it's just such a small part of the drawing. So with any picture, you want to, again, like sort of think about your primary focus, where the eye is going to be, where you want the eye to stay, and what just simply sort of helps. I am putting some, I just want to sort of clarify kind of the sides of this a little bit. So I think we can sort of make this line, this looks a little bit thick to me. And there we go. So yeah, some of it just to sort of like, so it's not perfect, but I think we'll get away with it. And because we are in the magic of digital art, we go to or try and through copy paste. So I'm going to duplicate this. What I've done is I used the layer selection, and I just options shift, so I'm working on the Mac, to just duplicate that. You can also duplicate this by, I can just go there, or select my layer, and then I command or control J, and I'll duplicate that. And we have that. Now these ones are going to be a little bit smaller because of the back. And I'm going to separate this a little bit. I think clearly we're going to have to make these kind of feel like they're blurring, because it kind of like, because I'm copying them all, they're all in the same position, and that may not look like, that doesn't necessarily make it look like it's moving, you know, it looks a little bit more stationary. So we're gonna do that, and I'm just gonna I'm gonna skew things a little bit, just because, you know, we're thinking about like the foreshortening is kind of having an effect on these things. So there we go. We'll go with it now. We are gonna, that's a character. Important thing for you, and if you're working with in a studio, please name your layers. So this is my character. Yeah, these are the back wheels, and oops, and these are the front wheels, and this is the board, which I actually lowered the opacity on. There we go. Board. Great. So why is this on Sketch? Why is this so important? Well, because, you know, it's easy when you have like 3 or 4 layers like this, but like in digital art, things can get really big really quickly. And it's a real pain to sort of dig out for like layer 55 and figure out what that is, you know. And especially, you know, I mean, if you're working on your own, you know, I'll give you a pass, you know. But if you're working in a studio, and say, for instance, say you're doing, you know, you're doing your work in your file, and then for whatever reason you go on holidays, or you're sick or whatever, and then somebody else has to work with your file, and then like you may know what layer 55 you know 34B means, but I don't. So when you come back from holidays, I'm gonna hunt you down. So it is important. It is, you know, you know, you think it's silly because it's like, you know, it's just sort of like, you know, management or something, but it does matter, you know, because you kind of want to save time wherever you can. You want to be efficient, and these things, it's like if you're running with like a pebble in your shoe, you know, it's just affecting how you're running. So you want to like figure out the same thing with like, say, like learn your hotkeys, or like sort of find a nice workflow, you know, like work in a like comfortable chair, obviously, you know, within your resources and your options, you know. Those things, you know, sometimes you don't have to suffer to make good art, you know. Even though, you know, sometimes we're in pain, you know, you can do, you know, just find something that improves your workflow, and little things like this actually do make a difference, you know. I work in storyboarding a lot of time, and that means that I'm doing like, say, hundreds of panels, so I have to be very fast on them. And you know, you might think, well, you know, this slow down, this thing that I do slows me down for like whatever 30 seconds, so it's no big deal per panel. But if you think about it, like, well, if it's slowing me down 30 seconds per panel, but I'm doing 500 panels, you know, that actually starts, you know, that suddenly means that you're staying late, you know, or things like that. So you know, there's no like necessarily holy grails. It's not like suddenly we're still finding for the make it cool button, a hotkey on the keyboard, but you can find sort of little exponential improvements that will you know, help you, because it'll save you energy, and it means that's energy that you can put onto your work, you know, rather than just being like fed up or exhausted because of some technical issue or whatever. Cool. So I got my character layer, my back wheels, front wheel. Back wheels should be at the back, shouldn't they? Front wheels, board, and yeah. So I got my 4 separate parts on the character. Great. So what I'm going to do, I'm happy enough with the line work as it is. You know, obviously we could go into a little bit more, but I think it's enough for what we're doing here today. That's right. Clean your teeth before bed. Never split the party, and always name your layer, folks. That's right. That's right. Yeah, this is the code by which we live on. You know, and never split. Speaking of, sorry. You said split the party, and Tom is actually the DM in our Dungeons and Dragons game, and like yesterday we had a session that I don't know, man. I think it might be the second to last session because we're facing a big baddie, and I don't know how that's gonna go. I don't know how it's gonna go. It's gonna be a bloodbath. So I'm gonna. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now? Okay, let's move on to color. So what I do here is that I have. I'm gonna separate. I'm just gonna show you the character. So what I do is I select my wand tool. Okay. And this is how I like to work. I'll select the entirety. I select outside the line, you know. So right now, I don't know if you can make it out, but you know, the squiggly line says that I selected the space outside the character, which is all this sort of big white, you know. In fact, if I was to like, you know, quickly bucket paint that, this is what you're seeing. This is what I selected. The black thing is what I selected. Obviously, that's not what I want. I want to select exactly the opposite. So I go to my select tool on Photoshop on the top, and I'm just going to sort of inverse that, or shift command I, you know. So I reversed the polarity, and now I'm selecting the character inside the line, and I'm also gonna, now what you can see, the sort of the line is gonna just around the edges. Now I kind of like to sort of tighten that a little bit more, and I'm just gonna modify it and contract it by like 1 pixel. Just means that it's inside the line proper. Why is that? Well, you're gonna see what I'm doing here now. So what I'm going to do here is just going to create a fill shape. I'm just going to fill the selection. There it is. Okay, so that's the selection that separates. That's the character. You see, it's in a separate character and a separate layer there. I'm going to call that fill. And you know, that can be any color you want, but you know, gray, sort of a neutral gray is handy for terms of color. So what I'm going to do next is going to create a third layer. And I'm gonna call that color. We're gonna call that flat color rather, because what I'm gonna pick up is the flat color. That is the color without any sort of shade or rendering or lighting. Beg your pardon. And and it's above the fill. Now, if I draw that now, if I was to paint anything on that line, the layers kind of sort of stack on top of each other as if we're like cells. You know. It's just there, and it's kind of going through everything. Like there's, you know, I could paint, but then I would have to sort of go in and sort of erase the things that I've gone over. And that, I don't want that, and that's not efficient. So what I can do is I'm going to right click on my flat color layer. Oops, sorry. And I'm going to go and select create clipping mask. Now there's different approaches to this. People do it different ways, but like this is how I like to do it. So there's a clipping mask. So what that means now is that this flat color layer, you might see there's a little arrow on it. This flat color layer it's constrained by the layer underneath, which is the fill layer, which is the shape of the character. So this flat color, no matter what I do on it, it just won't go outside the line. Okay, and that means I don't have to worry about being too sort of finicky or picky about you know, whether I'm going over the edge or not, etc. If I like release clipping mask, then you can see it's all over the place, you know. So that way, you know, I can sort of go in and paint. And this is kind of what I was saying at the start about like making sure that you're kind of working in a non-destructive way. It just means that like my color is separated from my line, you know, so you know, things are not sort of at risk of sabotaging each other, you know. Fill layer, nice to meet you. I actually, you know, the moment I wrote down Phil demo, I thought, oh, that's kind of funny. And I thought somebody might say something, and there you are, darling. Thank you. And okay, cool. So I'm gonna do my colors. Now I have Photoshop has libraries which are really useful. Libraries, you know, are basically you create assets, so you create drawings, pictures, etc., and then you can sort of save them, and then you can sort of readily available to sort of drag and drop them on different things. It's very handy if you're doing a game yourself, because you know you can have like all the things that you've done are just sort of there available to you. So what I do have, yeah, I have a library here of my palette, you know, which is the colors that I use for these characters. And so It just means that I just, I just choose my color, my swatch. This goes away. There we go. Okay. So there you go. Now, depending on how desperate I am in time, you could just sort of go in like brush stroke it. Or, what many people do is that I use my lasso tool, hotkey L, although I use my polygonal lasso. You have two lassos. You have like this sort of freehand lasso, and you have your polygonal lasso, which means that like you just pick a point and then you pick the click and the next point, which makes it a little bit more easy to control. You can actually if I press the option tool though, I can sort of do little sections like that, and then I can sort of go back to my polygonal lasso. If anything that I said, by the way, guys, obviously now I will click by accident. If anything that I said you want me to go a little bit more in depth, or you want me to sort of repeat it, or or you want to sort of ask me sort of a follow-up on that, by all means please do. I'm absolutely delighted to do it. I'm just gonna sort of keep moving, but by all means please, if you have any questions, or you can just sort of put it in the comments later and we'll be more than happy to sort of try to address them. This is a safe space, so any questions that you may have regarding the process, or indeed anything else that may be on your mind, within reason, we're more than happy to hear from you and for you to say it, and we'll answer it. There are no wrong questions, okay? So there we go. Now it doesn't matter if I go over a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, so you see this red because this is the red that I kind of sort of dropped all over the place, but if I erase it, what you see is the gray that is underneath. Great. So that's kind of the main chunk of it. It's her overalls. So we're gonna pick the shirt. Doop, doop, doop. What I can do is I can sort of press, as I have a selection area, I can press shift and then I'll just add another selection, and we'll sort of do that quickly, and then I'm gonna have another one, and I'm just sort of clicking on the shirt. Boom, boom. Yeah, again, this is just sort of like the mechanics of things. So it kind of is important, to remind yourself that there's just no montage, I know it, I mean, I don't know about your life, but I know that like if I have to go shopping, I have to go into a shop, pick the things, and go to the next shop and pick as well, when you could go to the shop, so you see. But it's not like your life suddenly breaks into like a split screen and there's three of you trying like different outfits or anything like that, so some things just take time, it's one of those things. Yeah. Oh, by the way, once I selected the area, I just press option backspace or option enter, and it just automatically fill with the color that you've picked in your swatch. Now some of these kind of litter. Oh, I forgot about. Let's see, I didn't catch this before. These little sections here, I'm just gonna paint very quickly. Oops, that's the wrong color. Oh, this no. Yeah. That's right. In a second. Sure. Sorry. Maybe it's just the color. It's just happens that the gray that I picked for the background was. Alright, there we go. Okay, sorry. I think I had the wrong brush active. So there we go. So for these things, I mean, I could go in with a lasso tool and sort of like clip all the different sections, but it's to me anyway, it's just as easy to just sort of go with a brush. and just sort of fill them up myself. Design-wise, also you want to try to stay within a certain sort of range of colors. You know, you at least certainly in animation, but I think overall it's a good principle to have. Sort of restrict yourself, sort of pick a few colors and sort of see what you can do with that. You know, rather than sort of like add like a million, at least for the basics, rather than adding a million different things, because I'll just complicate your design. Usually something around like like a 5 color swatch. You know, maybe with a couple of variants or things like that. That will be enough, at least to get you going. You know, obviously when you render and lighting comes into play, things may vary, but that should be enough. You know. Raul, couldn't you use the lines you already have in the other layer instead of using the selection tool to redefine the section you're coloring? In other words, that's what's going this way. Yeah, you could use that actually. It's a bit of a workflow, and like for instance, I think if I understand what you're saying, is that like I'd have to go into my character line, pick my wand, select that section, and then go onto my flag color, and then actually pick the put the color on the boot. You know, so. As you can see, that there's a couple of things with that. You could do that. I sometimes do that depending on on how big the section that I'm working on. The problem is that if I do that, I am in this case, for instance, it's picking up this little line that I had in, you know, that just for details. So it's kind of it's beginning to sort of separate what, from a color perspective, is just one solid section. That line is actually separating it a little bit. And it's kind of complicating things. Also, because even though the brushstroke is this brushstroke is non-rasterized, you know, what that means, sorry, rather say it's rasterized. That you know, it kind of like the black kind of grays down. You know, it's not like a hard pixel. So the wand might not pick exactly all the area that you want. The sort of gray pixels are gonna get sort of caught in the middle. So sometimes, so you can do what you're saying, but there are kind of risk attached to it. And again, you're kind of dancing between layers. In this way, I'm always sort of sticking onto the layer of the color layer. I've done that thing that you mentioned. I've done it. I've tried sometimes, and sometimes it works, and sometimes I find myself that I forgot to switch layer, and I ended up painting on the line layer. You know, so it's a valid question. Thank you. It's just that like for preventing mistakes, I think, or sort of little kind of niggly issues, you might find that it is better to sort of do it this other way. Okay, I think I actually picked the yeah, I was wondering, I thought that looked a bit dark. Oh, see, there you go, I am drawing on the line. Okay. So that kind of sort of protects. I hope that answers your question. Let me know, and I can sort of try again or see if something else makes more sense. I'm gonna this red, which was just for the example, is kind of getting in the way now for me to see the other things. Oh, I forgot, I could have actually painted the helmet at the same time I painted the gloves, because they're both yellow. Doop, 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 doop. Sorry for the special effects, by the way. I mean, I can try different ones, like bing, 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 bing. Oh, I don't know, maybe that's a copyright violation? It's okay, Tom will take care of it. I'm just the artist. So, right. I'm gonna put the one color. There we go. And just the headphones on. There we go. So yeah, so in terms of colors, I just wanted something, when it came to the design of the characters, it was just to find something that would be kind of a nice base, you know, something that would be lively colors that would pop. It was also finding colors that maybe would like, yeah, that would kind of sort of stand out a little bit. But obviously, you know, there's nothing sort of like, you know, like there's no major like breakthrough here. You know, that the characters are just you know, are kind of wearing like, I mean, yellow helmets and blue overalls are not really like sort of groundbreaking in terms of factory work apparel. But yeah, just trying to find something that would suit them. Oops, sorry. Again, we're making mistakes, so this is all okay. But you can see sometimes I just kind of, I think maybe because I'm in the flow of just drawing with the brush, I kind of just sort of prefer just to do that. Certainly faster sometimes with like small sections that are very curved. You might as well just do that, and you know. But there's no like hard rule about this, and I suppose it's important to say, you know, it is art at the end of the day, so there are no metrics here. If it works, and this is sort of like a common thing in the industry. You know, people say, yeah, that works, and that's very abstract, you know. But just means that, you know, if it's creating the effect that you want, and it's sort of pleasant to the eye, ultimately, you know, it has to be pleasant to the eye. That's what art is there for, or at least to start with. Then it's working. So I'm just gonna do her base key. Now this is kind of like a nice base for you to work on. I know that the ultimate color is gonna change a little bit because I will go in and I'm gonna put like shading on it. It should be quick enough. Like, these characters are not too complex in that sense, and we'll add a little bit of extra sort of oomph to the color. Just try to make it a bit more lively. But it is helpful to sort of work on this. You know, you're separating your color choices from your shades and your tones. Some people prefer to work first doing like do like a grayscale, and they'll do. I don't actually have a color for here. Hair. Let's just do brown. Let's just try. Yeah, don't think. I mean, I know that there's one with like a blonde ponytail, but I think we can, let's try something a little bit brownish there. So yeah, so like the sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Yes, that's right. Some people work on a grayscale. They like do all the kind of sort of like black and white kind of and grades of shades and tone, and that is a valid way of doing it. And then they will kind of sort of add. They'll kind of use the color in a different layer, so they kind of figure out the lighting in many ways, and then they put the color. That's fine. A lot of concept work is done that way. For me, in this case, I tend to work better if I think about the color first, and then I kind of think about the lighting. I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad. It's just the way I work. Yeah, it works. And again, because these characters are very much sort of in an animated kind of style, you're kind of like thinking sort of very like cell animated to some degree. So sort of working on the base colors and the flat colors should be fine. Great. Let's see. What's the factory floor centric? That's right. We should have an album. We should have an album of the factory floor soundtrack. You know. We'll get Eliza, or just mind-blowingly amazing marketing person to like maybe sort of source out, you know, what the audience wants. So I'm gonna do the same thing with this the board. I'm gonna try to do this quickly enough. Now these things are very basic in terms of like what they need. In fact, what I'm gonna do is I know that they have like little, yeah, because all these things have like these sort of like grooves. So I'm just gonna like, no. Oh, this is important. Don't like see why was this line bad? It's because it's sort of a tangent. These two lines are kind of touching each other, and tangents are normally a bad thing because it kind of messes up with your perception of depth on it. You know, so it's like if you had you know, if you have a circle that is in front of a square, you know, you want things to kind of overlap, you know, so you understand that one thing is in front of the other. You know, if I do this, even though technically you're saying that the square is still behind the circle, because they're touching each other, it kind of sort of brings into the same plane. So tangents can ruin a drawing, man. So be careful about those. So that's the board, and we're gonna do the back wheels, yeah, which we're not gonna see much of it once we kind of get to the nitty-gritty of it. In fact, I'm just gonna what's that? Oh yeah, so there. I'm gonna inverse, and we're just gonna just color pick that. You know, they don't really need anything more than that. And you can see though, like if you take a notice to my, you know, my layer stack, you know, it used to be, it was small, but it's kind of getting bigger, and it's kind of getting more unwieldy, sorry. So this is again why, you know, naming things can be handy. And in Photoshop then we can also put them in folders. So I know these two things are the front wheels, so I'm just gonna make them, but I've separated into color and line. So I'm gonna do that. I separated them, so that's a group there. And same thing with the board. So fill, color, and we're gonna separate it. We're gonna have them in the board folder, and I'm gonna do the same thing now with the back wheels. Trying to set a good example here. That's what I'm doing on this. Hope it means something. And yeah, we'll just kind of group the characters. So again, it just keeps things tidy. Maybe I'm just a bit OCD about these things. Tom, don't answer anything about that. And we'll just carry on. Okay, so we got our colors. Sweet. So, you know, now it looks nice. It's kind of bringing in a little bit more life, but it does look flat, you know, like it's just flat colors. So so I'm going to sort of start working on the shading. Now, there's different ways to do shading, you know, a lot of styles. These characters, I didn't want to get too bogged down by it and too complicated by them. They are kind of roundy, they are kind of sort of cylindrical. So rather than doing like, we could do a hard, like a hard shade or hard sort of edge to the shade. And sort of to do the shade, I'm going to create a new layer. It's going to be a clipping mask again, so it still stays within the shape of the body. And just call that shadow. And you know, you could do, you know, it means it's going to paint on it. Now, obviously, many styles that you can do with shadow. Now we could do like sort of, this is kind of like the 90s comic style, you know, like heavy inking everywhere, obviously, and that's, I don't know, begin to look like she's been in an oil spill. Obviously we don't want that, that's useless. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first, we don't want that hard black, you know, it's not a heavy ink comic book, so I'm gonna change the layer style to multiply. And like Photoshop, you know, each layer can sort of behave, you can tell it to behave in different ways in terms of how it interacts with the layers underneath, in terms of how the color laps. So I'm just gonna put a multiply. No, it's just still, I'm gonna reduce the gradient of the multiply. Just means just transfers the black on it. And now we have, you know, we have a base layer. Again, you know, we don't want to get too sort of, it's not going to be a very complicated shading system with them. We're just kind of thinking about where would these shadows kind of happen. Now we do have to then now we have to think about lighting. Where's the lighting coming from? Lighting is gonna come in, you know, I'm gonna do two lightings on it. Usually it's gonna be a sort of a main light that's gonna come from here, and there might be a little bit of a backlight here to sort of make the backlight is something that, you know, you do on like TV and things like that. It just puts some light on the back of the character, gives them an edge, and it makes them pop a little bit more. So if I'm thinking about those in those terms, then these two, this shadow probably works. This will be fine. This one not necessarily, because this one's just gonna be like the light should be hitting on it. There might be there'll be some of it somewhere over here under the arm. And you know, we'll put in, there'll be some on this sort of little pocket. I forgot the belt. Shocker. Okay. There we go. Luckily that's not a big thing. There we go. And shade the color there. Okay, great. And check there. Great. So maybe a little bit there. All right. And we're just doing just a little bit that. Now, I should point out that right now what we're doing here, this is like this is a sort of a hard edge shadow here, which I haven't used in the characters before, because again, most of the time the characters, I kind of wanted to give them this sort of slightly 3D-ish feel, if you will, you know. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to change, we're finally going to go use another brush, and we're going to go to a brush, an airbrush, that should yeah, that should give it a little bit more edge of sort of give it a little bit more of a 3D feel. It's going to be softer. Now some people don't like that, that's fine, and certainly you want to be careful with that, not to overdo it, and you know, I think whether it's appropriate for the character that you're using. Now sorry, I'm just checking the. Ooh, like it. No worries, Eliza. Sorry, thanks to you. Like, I mean, we've done such an amazing work. Really couldn't recommend it anymore. Like, it's top-notch stuff. Great. So we're right. Okay. So I'm gonna do her character before moving on to the board, because again the board is going to be very quick. So let's pick a soft brush. So there we go. Yeah, so we're just softening that edge again, because I just want a little bit, just to give that a little bit more of a graded feel to the shadow. One thing with selection tool that is quite handy, for instance, is that even here, you know, I could do this, right? So I'm going to pick that. What it means is that I'm restraining my drawing to that area. It means that I can do the shade without necessarily spilling out, you know, onto the rest of it. I'm also going to pick up, I'm going to change my eraser to a soft eraser as well, just to sort of, again, because the buckle kind of has a little bit of a, you know, it's going to have some depth. There we go, and we are just softening this edge as well a little bit. What I'm thinking, yeah, now this is where, yeah, I might be thinking, well, is that light gonna hit that way, the way I'm thinking? I think that's okay. But again, because we've, for the most part, work in a rather sort of non-destructive way, it means that it should be easy enough for me to go back and fix things if I'm not happy with them, you know. But why would I not be happy with it? It's brilliant, it's great, I'm amazing. right? Great. So we're let's just do this. We're gonna solve that. Alright, yeah. Let's miss this one here. We're gonna do a little bit shading. And yeah, again, like sometimes it's handy that your eraser is the same as your brush, because that way, you know, if as you go and fix things, everything kind of remains kind of within the same style, or is sort of homogeneous in how you're presenting it, which is very important. And don't be afraid, you know, to, you know, just sometimes, you know, you can sort of think of shadows in like a very sort of like itemized way, that you're just thinking about the shadow in this section and this section, but like sometimes the shadow is a big shadow and covers a lot of chunk of the body, you know, and that's fine, you know. Don't be afraid of putting the shadows if that's what it makes sense, you know. In this case, you know, there's more shadow in the body than in her face because she's turning her face to the side, and we're making this work. Great. Okay. I think, yeah, I feel that hair shape might be it. Yeah, I think that's okay. Might be something to look at. And we'll put a little bit in the nose here, just to sort of add a little bit of depth to that. Great. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's working. So we're gonna very quickly. Now this is a black shadow, actually, I should say. I mean, it's kind of grayed out because I lowered the opacity. I could, for instance, choose to change the coloring of it. Sometimes, because a dead black shadow is not necessarily nice, sometimes it can be a bit heavy, you know, so I may choose to actually use, which I've been doing with a lot of the characters here, so I choose to use like a sort of a deep blue intense shadow, and then I can, you know, obviously depending on the intensity of light, I could sort of like work with that a little bit more. That might be a bit too heavy actually, because I don't think this is like a heavy shadow pose, you know, like the shadows kind of convey certain moods and things like that, you know. And in this case, you know, we're happy, we are clearly on our break, and we're just having fun, so, you know, like heavy shadows don't necessarily, you know, there's a risk that's not going to convey what we want there. So very quickly, let's put in the shadow there. Yeah, keep it at 20. If I'm happy with, like, say this color that I use here, I can sort of copy the layer style there, and I can sort of paste it on it. It just means then that, like, that color will be, you know, again, I'll remain the shadow remain consistent, you know, across the board. Might actually make that a little bit harder because it's the shadow, you know, to see where she's kind of sort of sitting or standing. And as I make a mistake, I'm thinking, you know what, maybe I save this, you know. Straight. There you go. Because, you know, we're working with computers, and, you know, they break. They wait for the perfect time, just as about you're gonna, like, do your final pass, and then everything collapses. I think you all know that probably. I don't know if you were like, I was the person who, like, in college, oh wow, I would, like, all my files, I would save them every 5 minutes. So I had, like, you know, like version like 55x-34, because I just kept making versions and versions of things, you know, because I was always paranoid that things would collapse, and I didn't want to, like, waste time doing anything again. Oh, this is the back wheels. Sorry. Just forgetting that. So the back wheels are here. Again, we're just gonna paste that layer style. Needs to be a bit harder. Yeah, we're gonna now with you know, be careful with, like, heavy geometry, because they kind of have clear edges in terms of what is shadow and what is not, you know. So that's, even though we're kind of doing like fuzzy edges to the character, the wheels are going to behave in a different way because they are just they're clear faces to it, as it were. Copy layer style. This, for instance, actually, this is a good example of where to use, the lasso tool to make sure that things don't spill. I suppose I could just, do a quick fill on it as well. For instance, I could do, yeah, so it's gonna be, let's see, sorry, I'm just thinking about this. Okay, yeah, I think that should be fine. Yeah, so there is a little bit of we're gonna like do a little bit of shading here because of what's sticking out. There we go, and same thing with now what I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna like add a little bit more shadow to kind of like the little hole in the middle, because it should be darker than the rest of the face of it, because the light is there should be less light going in there. Now, because the way I've set up things, I'm gonna have to sort of add another layer on top of that, and we'll just do, this is very heavy again, lower that. There we go. And to be fair, I'm just a bit conscious. I don't want you guys to like waste all your evening or middle of the day or wherever you are just looking at this sort of little things. I could going a little bit more careful about some of these things, but we're gonna move on to the lighting, and I think should I? Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna create yet another layer, and I'm gonna make this an overlay layer, which kind of sort of really makes things punch out. And we're gonna pick up, and there we go. And just adding a little bit of light. I'm a bit sort of loose. I'm kind of gonna play it a little bit loose. I'm gonna want light here on her eyes, on her face, and on the helmet. Now we see, for instance, I kind of want light around around the rim of the hat, but I want to keep the shadow on the underlay or on the bottom part of it. It may be that it's, you could argue that some light should hit that, but just to make the sections contrast a little bit better. There we go. And I think light might be hitting. I'm a bit conscious of the time, so I'm kind of gonna go a little faster here. It is entirely possible that after a sit-down, I might have a look at this again, think, well, you know what, I think that lighting could be sort of adjusted a little bit, and that's okay. Oh, thanks Tom. Great, and we are. What I like, I think that'll do for now. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna choose. I kind of like having two different tones of light, like for the backlight and the front light, so it separates it. And we're just gonna do a little bit of an edge there, and we have to think again, like this part of her body, her torso, there may be some light hitting there actually, separated, because we have to think about how each part of their body sort of is interacting with the light a little bit. Yeah, great. Let's maybe a little bit overexposed there. Okay. Sorry guys, maybe I'm kind of zoning into it a little too much now. But don't worry, we are getting there. And create clipping mask, overlay. Yeah, great. And the same. And we're just going to add a bit of light to the front of our board, and we're gonna do somewhere to the back wheels just so it pops a little bit. And we're gonna do it to the front wheels as well. Front wheels. That's and clipping mask. Again, because they're metal sections, you probably want to be very clear, very specific about how the light is hitting them. To be fair, I didn't really do that in the back wheels. But I think I can get away with it. You won't tell anybody, right? Thank you. It's not like there's a permanent record of what's going on that's being said here. Okay. Cool. So, happy days. Nearly there. So, what I want to do now, there's a couple of things, last couple of things I'm going to do. I'm actually going to group all this into like sort of full character, because there's a couple of last things I want to try and do that might be okay just to do them as a full thing. I can do a clipping mask on a group, which is great because then I can affect the entire thing. And I just want to add, I have a little brush over here. It just adds yeah, some speckles, and that's just to sort of add a little bit of texture on the character. We're gonna do an overlay as well, and there we go. That's right. So I'm gonna use like my whites. So what I'm doing here is it's the same speckle brush, but I have black and white, and I can, with X I can switch between those two very easily. So we're just I'm just kind of adding the white speckles around the sort of the highlight areas, as it were, and I'm gonna add the dark speckles. It's a bit heavy actually. Might actually lower the opacity of the brush itself. Yeah, great. And you know, we can add it to the textures will be really handy for metals and things like that. It kind of adds, you know, without you having to have gone, you know, too heavy and things. And just adding the sort of final touches, it just gives it a little bit more. I believe the technical term is oomph, and it just add a little bit more, right? In fact, what I can do is with very soft brushes. Now this is more kind of, I'm eyeballing it now. I'm thinking maybe we just add, we'll try, yeah. So we're just adding a little bit. So the, you know, our skin tones can vary. Like there's areas of our skin that are going to be more pinkish or reddish rather, and some are more yellow or blue. So I'm kind of I'm playing a little bit now with the colors. It's just a little touch up, just to make it a little bit more varied, you know, to just kind of have a little bit more separation. Same with the hair. The hair actually, we haven't really done much with the hair, and it's just been kind of brown. So, you know, like it's actually a good exercise for you when you're doing color, you know. Try to look at the thing and realize that most things are not just like one dead flat color, you know. There's a lot of things. The way the light bounces and hits, you're gonna find different things on it, and trying to sort of give that nuance to your picture, it might make it pop, you know. Color, I kind of usually say color is like, you know, if line is like the lyrics of a song, color is the music of the song. You know, like color makes you feel things. And you don't know exactly why, or you didn't kind of sort of consciously spot that is happening, but color will make you, you know, sort of react. Light and color will make you sort of feel things. So kind of play with those things, and you kind of sort of get like harmony and make things work on it. Great. Nearly there. Last thing I'm gonna do is, I tend to like to do this. I kind of add a little gradient. This is on my layer style. Layer style is a very powerful tool. You can add a lot of effects on your layer. And what I'm doing is, now you can see what you're seeing. If you see it in normal, this is what I'm putting on. I'm putting a gradient of light, of colors, and what it helps me is I'm sort of picking up like my warms and my, nothing too strong, you know, but obviously you're not going to see it like that, so I'm putting overlay. Now that's obviously burning the color right now, so I'm just going to bring it lower, but it's just a little touch of like warm areas to cool areas. It helps it pop, and it gives it a little bit more life altogether, in my opinion anyway. Yeah. And actually, what else? Oh yeah, we're just gonna I'm just adding another effect. That's just a little drop shadow. It's not something that you necessarily need to do. I kind of like to, because the character is sort of sitting on its own against a white page. Then we kind of do that. It just kind of makes the character, just lifts the character off the page. Thank you. Just kind of messing around with these settings a little bit. Ooh, there's probably an artifact there. Okay, I'm not doing that. There's, see, when you do those things, like the layer's gonna have an effect. So I'm just picking up, like it's like a little error. There we go. Yeah, there's like a little dot. Cool. Okay. And that is our character, guys. We actually hit it within 2 hours. I'm very impressed. And yeah, there we go. We can make her a little bit bigger in the page. Great. And now goes zoom. Oh, hold on. Oh, that's okay. So yeah, I forgot about the blur. We're just gonna see. Oh, that's gonna be a bit more of effects on it. See if we actually just try to, no, hold on. We're gonna do our there we go. Something happened there. Okay. Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. So I think maybe I'm just frying my computer between the stream and everything, and it's just doing a little bit of a funny thing. Okay, I think for the purposes of this, we're just gonna do this. Yeah, I think the graphics card is kind of having a bit of a meltdown now. Cool. And you know, speed lines. Okay. Something going on here in terms of color. Yeah, it's kind of disappearing. Okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna duplicate that. Yeah, so I'm gonna flatten that because I'm happy with that. And there we go. So we have our final version there, and I'm gonna add my spit lines there. input, do an effect. I'm going to blur. I'm going to do a motion blur. Yeah, okay. So, actually, yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna duplicate the layer. So I'm working on two flat layers now. I flatten everything, so it's one layer. I have everything saved as a group here, but like these effects are gonna be on this one. So I'm gonna keep one normal, but the one behind it, I'm gonna use a blur and a motion blur. We're just gonna make it blur a little bit. Now we're just gonna put it behind her, and I'm gonna like lower the opacity. We don't want it to be too overpowering, and I'm gonna that motion blurred one. I'm gonna duplicate that one as well. I'm gonna put it on top, but I'm going to erase a lot of that with I'm gonna soften that. I definitely could sort of spend a little bit more time working on this, but you guys have been really patient. Really appreciate, your time. Very grateful for everybody to be here. We're just gonna call this. I think that does the job. Zoom. She's very fast. Thanks, guys. Well, I think that's it. Appreciate all you watching and sort of putting up with my talking and my drawing. Thank you so much for the time. This was really fun. Yeah, if you ever want Space Dog to do anything like this again, but just give us a shout and let us know. We'll be more than happy to put it together. Again, this was a character from Factory Floor. Factory Floor. You can find it on Kickstarter right now. Link is at the top of the chat. Yeah, just check it out if you fancy. And guys, Pat from Space Dog saying thanks very much again for your time. It's great fun. Have a great rest of your day, and take care. Okay, lots of love. Peace. Bye.